one.
Hey, Mike. There's no right, there's no wrong. There's only popular opinion.
Yeah, we hello, my friend. Hello. I'm Mike, and we're parachuting in here with the Jeffrey Goings quote.
Yeah, I don't do a good impression, so
I don't either. So we're square there.
Yep. And if you're not familiar with Jeffrey Goings, by the end of this podcast, hopefully you'll be quite familiar with him. We're talking about 12 Monkeys, the movie. So what's your history with the movie, Mike?
Yeah, so I actually I was a very big Bruce Willis fan back in the day, growing up as a kid and whatnot, watching him, and I discovered this not too long into my teenage years. I saw this maybe a few years after it came out, and then it became kind of like a favorite. So I always loved this one. And then later on, I fell into another aspect of this, which we'll get into. But yeah, and this is always like a good, fun Bruce Willis movie that it's like his more lesser known one, kind of. I mean, it's popular, but it's not like. And of course, most people. The other thing too, I wanted to comment on this for this week was, it seems like this movie has two doors. You either come in and know about this movie with Brad Pitt because you're a Brad Pitt fan, or you're coming in because you're a Bruce Willis fan, in my opinion.
There's a third door.
or there's a third door. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But how about you?
Yeah, actually, I came in at not as a big Bruce Willis fan or a Brad Pitt fan, because at the time I was not really into action movies per se. I was more into arty movies. I was way into like Pulp Fiction and all of that during the 90s. So I thought I was a art house guy, and Terry Gilliam was way on my radar. He from Monty Python and Time Bandits, leading into, I was one of the few people that actually went to see The Adventures of Baron Munchausen in the theater, because I was big fan, which actually tanked his career for a while, because he got the reputation for spending way too much money on a failed movie, and he kind of built back his career by doing The Fisher King and then this movie 12 Monkeys. But I was very familiar with Terry Gilliam's quirky kind of film style, and that was what brought me to it. Not Bruce Willis, not Brad Pitt, but Terry Gilliam, because I knew I liked his type of movies.
Well, they really hate him. They don't have his director credits.
Yeah, IMDb's kind of their new format is way not user friendly.
We're gonna have to start using.
Yeah, you see that
but for now,
you see under credits those little bubbles, like towards the end there. There's director showing 20. Yeah.
Oh. No. No. Yeah, Fisher King. I remember Fisher King. That was like, I didn't I just remember the buzz about it, or it being talked about, not like in critic circles, but just in like seeing commercials and some, kind of seeing, kind of hearing things like whatever, like way after. But the 12 Monkeys thing, and I did, I also like this too. I was also remember liking this movie because this is around the time in the 90s, either right at or right before or just in the process of, like, where they had some of those kind of end of the world virus movies in the 90s. They kind of, there was like a string of them. Most of them were bad, but this was, I always remember this as being like, this one I love because it has the science, the crazy zaniness going on with the time. You can clearly see you're not in you're in a science fiction movie, basically, obviously, which I love about that, because it's it's kind of got aspects, dystopian aspects of everything that I love to, in a movie. But I always thought that this is right. And I'm not spoiling anything. There's something about a virus, but it was done right. But it also has, so there's also the fun arena that you jump into with these kind of movies, like where there's a little bit of science fiction, and they don't go. And I love this too. Like they don't go into they don't go to technobabble or try to attempt to explain how it all works. Just like Terminator, you don't know. It just is part of the thing. You accept it, you move on. That is also that aspect. But to me, and we'll get into this in a little bit here, but it has an opinionated take on time travel and what can happen, what can't happen. So it's just interesting. It's just kind of fun. Kind of a unique thing.
Yeah, so basically Cole is the main character played by Bruce Willis, and he is going back in time, not to actually save the universe, because like you said, there's a at the beginning of the movie there's a crawl that states that 5 billion people have died from this virus that has gotten loose, but he's going back to as a reconnaissance, trying to get animal samples and whatnot to help the scientists of the future. And one of the things I absolutely love about this movie is that it takes the position of what really would happen if someone from the future came back. We would think he was crazy. And that's the wonderful aspect of this movie is the idea of madness. Now, one of the things that would be pretty easy to do is this guy coming from the future into the past. You could play it, well, is this all in the Bruce Willis character's head? But they do a good job of stating that no, this is really happening. And maybe it's not all happening the way he thinks it's happening. Maybe his mind's being messed up in the process. But there's empirical evidence that he's from the future, that he's traveling time, and the fact that that's a solid among all the things that are malleable in your mind. That was one of the fascinating things I found, was that the whole time traveling aspect of it was a given. It wasn't that well, he may be just crazy, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, and there are, and you know something is going on, obviously, from the audience point of view, from the narrator, or from the overview. But it's and also I remember being younger. I remember watching it the first time, and I just was blown away by it, and I loved it. But I didn't pretend to know the ins and outs of how it worked until the second or the third view. Way on when I was a lot older, years later, that I revisit it and then kind of figure out, okay, and then you kind of, because you get the storyline, you don't need to know every little aspect of it. But then when you do learn that, when you learn the rules of the world and how it works and what they're talking about, what they're doing, it adds another layer of understanding to what's going on. And what is going on, they have this thing. Is it this group? Is it, is it the, it's the only thing for certain is that there are certain points that you keep coming back to, and eventually you end up at.
And me being of the physical media guy, I did get the new 12 Monkeys 4K, the Iron Video put out with all the wonderful extras. But it's in beautiful 4K. I watched it as the movie itself, and then I did go back and watch it again with Terry Gilliam and the producer Charles Roven's commentary on it from a few years back. And just rewatching it a second time back to back, had been forever since I'd seen it, so I'd forgotten a lot of the movie. So watching it for the first time again was great, because I was engrossed in the movie like I had been previously. But then going back a second time and watching it with the commentary, I started picking up a lot of there's a lot of circular things that happen within the movie. Like there's
Right.
the images of animals roaming the streets of Philadelphia. You get that at the beginning of the movie, and then there's an
Right.
echo of it towards the end of the movie, and there's a lot of echoing effects, and it almost that image of the mandala of the various monkeys just kind
Right.
of it's sort of a symbol for the movie, in that no matter where you're going in a circle, and you're going to end back up in the spot that you were previously. And there's sort of a nihilistic sense to the movie, in that
Yep.
no matter what happens, those 5 billion people are going to die. And
Right.
to echo Bruce Willis's line from the M. Night Shyamalan movie. What was that one called? My
Is that the
mind's
one like where they were at the hedges or something?
Oh, no, his
Or
first movie with
are
Bruce
you talking
Willis.
about the really bad Mark Wahlberg one?
No, his
Uh,
very first one.
oh gosh, God, what was his first one?
I see dead
Oh,
people. I see
yeah, yeah,
dead
yeah, yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah. Right.
uh,
Sixth Sense. Yeah,
Sixth Sense. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, there's the famous line, "I see dead people" from Sixth Sense. In this
Yeah.
movie, Bruce says, "All I see are dead people," which is a nice kind of echo from that movie as well. Because yeah, he's going back into the past, and all these people that he's meeting are, from what he understands, are dead. If you've got 5 billion people dead, most likely all of these people are dead and and gone. So um there's that sense of what is his purpose, because he doesn't they're not sending him in the past to correct things. They're wanting information, and so he's kind of
Right.
doing fact finding missions. But their their time traveling isn't precise. So the first time they send him back, instead of sending back to 1996, they send him all the way back to 1990. And so all of
Right.
the things that they set up for him to have communications with them are 6 year prior and do not work. So anything he tries to prove his case on things isn't there. So he ends up in a mental institution, which
Right.
interestingly, they say in the commentary that it was filmed in the first penitentiary in America.
Oh, okay.
um
Well,
so
it definitely adds to the whole thing. The
ambiance,
whole
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
that's
institutional feeling of like just the
mhm.
weight of like he's screwed.
uh,
He can't get
yeah.
anything done. You just absolutely hopeless. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot that plays
Mhm.
across his face for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and Terry Gilliam points out that if you actually filmed it in a real institution during that time, it would look nothing like that. Obviously, it would be much more
Sure.
receptive and clean, and
Right.
and not as bad. But
Not as Gotham City.
right, yeah. Do you film it as how it actually is, or how you that amplified picture that you would have in your mind of what it would be like to be in a place like that? And Terry says, his head's at where he wants to go into that heightened reality, and that the whole if you watch the scenes in that building, the hallways are kind of claustrophobic, and the way that he said that the intentions for the penitentiary, um instead of calling it, it's not the first prison, it's first penitentiary. And what's key in the name of penitentiary is that you're um going there for penance for your crimes. And
Mm,
so a lot of what was done in that institution was a lot of solitary confinement and reflecting on what you've done. And not surprisingly, they had a very high suicide rate in the in that institution. But yeah, just kind of that whole history and that weight of that place plays across the screen very well. And he does I'm not really big into camera lingo, but he does a lot of wide shots to get a lot of the screen in there. He doesn't do a lot of, even in his close-ups, he does wide shots so you can see a lot around it. And I think that plays really well in those scenes. And also he kind of plays the camera kind of up and towards the characters. Like that's where Bruce Willis's character meets the Brad Pitt character, Jeffrey Goings.
Right.
And Goings is definitely schizophrenic, psychotic, and and in those situations, there's this idea of what is Bruce Willis feeding into this character? Is he's feeding the manic nature of this character? And that's really interesting in that Brad Pitt is this manic, hyper reality kind of person and in those scenes, and Bruce Willis is this very slow and methodical and not moving kind of medicated guy, just letting all Bruce or Brad Pitt kind of hit him like a tidal wave. And normally you would be mainly focused on Brad Pitt because he's so animated, but the fact that Bruce is so still, and just watching him, that you're actually drawn back to Bruce when it goes to Bruce, because you're trying to get into Bruce's head. It's like, how is he perceiving Brad Pitt, whereas you're not really seeing what Bruce is seeing. And that the fact that there's not any emotions on Bruce lets you feed in your emotions into Bruce as a receptacle, and it kind of play, and you're playing back and forth with Brad in the scene, and so you feel like you're kind of like a participant in that scene, trying to figure out what's going on.
Oh yeah, you definitely feel like you're a member in the nut house, like with everything going on. And that's on top of the movie shifting you from here to there until you kind of catch up and see, like, what the hell, what are we doing here? And then you're forced to watch and see, because it's not the connective tissue is over here and there. And you, the viewer, are the connective tissue as you go through, and you kind of see what that circle means, like, and then you get in that aspect of that. What is in True Detective season 1? There is a famous scene where one of the characters talks to the Matthew McConaughey character, and McConaughey's character is kind of a spaced out dude anyway. Like, dude is lost. He's lost his touch, his sense of connective thing, anything in this world, it's just kind of like coasting through, I guess. And burnt out. Definitely very good character portrayal. But he says one of the character suspects that they end up running into says time is a flat circle. And then you just kind of it just plays into the whole thing. They didn't really say that here, but you get that sense that, like, man, you're in for a ride.
And it's one of those movies where both Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt had something to prove. Bruce was coming off of all these action movies, and Brad Pitt was coming from these pretty boy movies, Legends of the Fall, and Interview with the Vampire, where he's more or less just the the nice looking guy in the movie. So that both were really gunning for this movie and wanted very much to be in it. And the thing that Terry Gilliam said that sold him on Bruce Willis was when he was talking to Bruce about the Die Hard movie, and there was a scene that Terry really liked where the John McClane character's digging glass out of his foot, talking to his wife on the phone, and he starts to cry as that scene goes on. And Bruce said, that was my idea, to have the character cry. And Terry goes, his mind is like, oh, well, there's something more to this guy than just the action guy. He's thinking about the character and can get into the character's head. And so that's what sold him on that. And it pays off in this movie, because Bruce goes to places that he would not normally go in your average action movie. And I think this is one of the
Oh yeah.
testaments of him being a great actor in that, the character's pretty much kind of a, he's as smart as he can be in the situation.
Right.
He's kind of been stunted at an early age of a kid, so he doesn't have the experiences. So he's very strong, and he's got a lot of rage. So he's kind of a bit of a meathead, but there's like a childhood quality to the character as well. There's this childhood awe of actually going back in time and seeing things from his childhood that he remembers, and becoming enamored with him again from the past. And it's very interesting that he's able to play all of those different emotions for that character.
Right. Yeah.
And
yeah. I pull up some facts here. And Bruce Willis was worried that he wouldn't be able to get into the movie because of his action role. But as you just kind of laid out, that he was able to, thank God.
Yeah, and
this wouldn't have worked with another actor. I don't think, not very well anyway.
Yeah, well, his original idea was for that character to be done by Nick Nolte, and that Jeff Bridges would be the Jeffrey Goins crazy character, which would have been a completely different movie, but would have been interesting.
Oh God, yeah, that would have been really interesting. Yeah.
But the studio said no, we don't want those those actors in these roles, so he had to look elsewhere. Right. And then Brad Pitt, he really was trying to sell himself for the role of Jeffrey Goins, and the speech patterns for that Brad Pitt character is really manic. In his previous roles, he was very kind of subdued and didn't speak in that kind of tone. And so they brought in a linguist to work with him and see if he would be right for the role. And the linguist said no, he doesn't have the chops, he's not going to be able to do it. But Brad Pitt goes, I'm going to train, I'm going to do it, Terry, just trust me, I'll get this going. And to his credit, he worked with the linguist. He also worked with some doctors as far as how schizophrenics actually act. He also went to various institutions to kind of observe those manic schizophrenics. And he also right before they started filming, he kind of put himself into an institution under the name Jeffrey Goins to see if he could fool the fool the staff. And they said that they almost didn't let him out because he was he did such a good job.
The cow. No.
So he really fell into the role. Yeah, he really got into the role. And the whole idea,
he did great.
Yeah. And you see that crazy haircut that he has in the movie. He gave himself the haircut. Really, and he was trying to play off of the Legends of the Fall, and Interview with the Vampire just came out as they started filming this. And I think Time magazine or People magazine had named him the sexiest man alive that year. So obviously he was trying to play against that. And so it was his idea to give himself the haircut and have that one wonky eye. He had the kind of the thing in his eye that made it one of his eyes kind of stray off to the side. And so just to really kind of completely fall into that role. And when I was watching the movie this time, and especially with that shirt and everything, I got very strong vibes of Tyler Durden and Fight Club. The whole persona of Tyler Durden is there. And I don't think Fight Club could have been made without this movie. Brad Pitt would have had to gone through that process to get into that kind of crazy, larger than life role. And I kind of see this as a prequel to Fight Club, because this guy is Tyler Durden. And there's stuff that goes on in later in the movie where he starts to build up an army
Right.
that's very reminiscent of Fight Club, and I don't know how much of an influence
Hmm.
that had on one or the other. I forget
That's
when
very
Fight Club was written, and I know the movie came out in '99, but yeah, I'm sure David Fincher's seen 12 Monkeys and
Yeah,
was
Fight Club was written by Chuck Palahniuk. I know that
yeah.
because I was friends with a massive Chuck Palahniuk fan,
Uh-huh.
and we would back in the heady days of my youth, we would all hang out at a
Uh-huh.
Steak and Shake and just kind of hang out, and he would always have a book from Chuck Palahniuk or whatever, and
Yeah.
he would read. He was a pretty fun guy to hang around. But anyway, I learned about the whole Chuck Palahniuk thing, and he put on a writing workshop at that point in time. Anyway, he did
Mhm.
some cool stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, Fight
Yeah.
Club. I didn't think about. I did not put those two together.
Yeah, and
That is
talk
really
about
cool.
talk about synchronicity. I just looked up the book. Fight Club book came out in 1996, the year that this
Wow,
this takes place when this comes
that's
out.
funny.
So yeah, there's
Right.
that whole sense of secret. So obviously, I guess I'm sure Chuck didn't see the movie and wasn't influenced on writing it because of this. But
Oh,
yeah, the fact that
yeah.
those both came out at the same time, and yeah, and Brad Pitt was connected later on to the book, and there's very similar things with it. But yeah, I would dare anyone to do like a double feature of 12 Monkeys and Fight Club and not see the similarities there.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's it takes the storytelling. It's in such a kind of unique, abstract way. They both have their own unique ways of doing it, but they're very kind of similar. I think Fight Club's a little bit more put together and more modern. More modern, I guess, is what I
Yeah.
would call it than
Yeah.
this one, because you can tell that there's some things that hold up. I think most of the things hold up pretty well in this movie. There are a couple things
Hmm.
that kind of I would be curious to actually go back and rewatch this in 4K, like true 4K, like that, like on a physical
Yeah.
media, because I don't want to see a upscale whatever, or
Right.
whatever voodoo magic they do on the. Of course, maybe I could download a 4K copy or something. I don't know. I'm sure
Yeah.
sure it's out there
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah. And
to pay for.
I think the one thing I love about Terry Gilliam's sci-fi movies is that there's a lot of like in that scene there. There's a lot of found things for the the science of it. There's if you're thinking about the science fiction of Star Trek and those various things, is always very clean, very pristine, very
Right,
streamlined.
right.
Whereas with
Neat, orderly.
yeah, neat and orderly. Whereas, obviously this fits the world in that, time, since the virus hits in 1996, time sort of stops for them. They go underground to avoid this virus. So all of their technologies from 1996 and is repurposed and realigned so that everything's kind of dirty and grimy and reused and has varied various, it's kind of branched off to where we are today. But yeah, in they only had a $30 million budget. In Terry Gilliam's big purpose for this movie was to prove to a major studio that he can stay on budget and make a movie that does well, which he
Right.
actually does that. But one of the things that he did, that there's a hour and a half long documentary called what was it, The Hamster Factor and Other Tales of 12 Monkeys, and it's a film crew that follows him from day one of shooting all the way through to his interviews on David Letterman and whatnot,
Okay.
and the accolations and everything at the end. But it was, you see from the making of the movie that there's a clear conscious decision to make it as cheaply but as well as possible, to create those underground environments of the future. They went to Philadelphia and Baltimore and found all those factories, abandoned factories that they could repurpose into, these big facilities. And they just have that. And he said, if you built that as a set, you wouldn't have all the weird little quirky stuff that you would have in a real location like that. There's stuff that you show up on the day to film, you go, oh, well, this is kind of weird, but that wouldn't have
Right.
been there if you had it all planned out. And I think that the
Yeah.
fact that they used all of those locations just added to the interesting nature of the movie. You your eye goes everywhere looking at all the various things, going, okay,
Right.
what does that do? What does that do? And like, there's in the interrogation scenes when they're interrogating Bruce, they have that big eyeball or big round ball that has all those video cameras on him, interviewing him. I thought of, well, okay, that's that's that future version of Zoom, They've got
Right.
a Zoom call.
That's true. Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The nature of how it takes a good director with a good mind,
Mhm,
view in their mind, that they can translate that to that, and
mhm.
more to the point of like using what you have on set and being resourceful like that as a
Yeah.
director,
Yeah, and
can.
yeah, and sometimes he maybe focuses a little too much. The name of the documentary, The Hamster Effect, was a term that they came up with while filming it, to kind of talk about how obsessed that Terry Gilliam will get on something. And in an interview, Terry Gilliam made the joke that they would have called it the gerbil effect, but Richard Gere had already taken that. So
Oh no.
that's Terry's kind of humor. But there's a scene.
Right.
There's a scene after Bruce Willis has gone off. He's in the future and he goes off to for a collection of samples and stuff out in the world, and he comes back in, and there's a scene where he's nude in a chair giving himself a shot. And it's a very wide shot, and there's a little thing off to the side where you can notice there's like this kind of a light box, and there's a hamster wheel with a hamster in it. And Terry
Huh.
Gilliam was very obsessed with getting that hamster to go on the wheel while that scene's going on. And he was focusing way more on the hamster than Bruce at that time. But he may have wasted a little bit too much money just to get that hamster going, but that he was very much focused on that. And on that glorious 4K release, I can confirm that you can see that hamster going. But
That's
he said
awesome.
he loves those little details to where he says he makes movies to be rewatched. He doesn't, these are a piece of archival history, and that, you know, if you put those little things in it, you're, someone's going to spot that hamster and go, oh, that's interesting. And then they'll tell it to their friend, and, that there'll be that kind of oral history of the movie that's built up over these little details that people obsess over, which is very interesting. And he kind of says that
Oh
he
God.
almost likes the idea of that hamster is actually powering this whole thing,
That's
in its
funny.
little wheel.
Well, there's all kinds of endless rabbit holes you can fall into with from the start to the end, and
Hmm.
what really happened, or that kind of sort of thing. Like you could, and this is like one of those good movies of like, well, I don't know. It looks like, what do you think? That kind of sort of, let the audience decide, let them come to their own conclusions or draw their own conclusions with that. But they did pick this up later on, and make a TV show on it. And I've only ever gone so far as like the first season or so into it. And it's been years, and I fell off a cliff and then I revisited. So it's been a really long time. I watched it when it was new, like after the fact. But then I kind of lost uh, focus. And actually, a friend told me about the show, and I was like, "What?" And I looked it up, and I fell into it. It was really good, and I think that it was the show's pretty good. But anyway, that might be something that we might look into a little bit later on. But for the most part, like at least as far as like the first first part of it, like it definitely pulls you in into that because like, okay, how they're going to do this, and then you go right back into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is definitely, that's funny that he does that for rewatchability, because you can probably
Yeah.
watch this. This is probably one of the cool movies that you can actually probably like watch uh, um, uh, within a certain pretty close time distance
Yep.
to each other, and still enjoy it. And not because, like, I don't know about you, but like after I see something, I want
Mhm.
to break from it. I don't want to, like, I mean, unless I revisit a
Right.
thing, or I didn't get, I wasn't clear on something, or
Yeah.
I fell asleep, or
Yeah.
something silly like that.
Right. Yeah.
Or I'm just, splitting up, time shifting the when I
Mhm.
watch it.
Yeah.
This is something you can, like you were saying, just like the scenes, the scenes themselves. There's all kinds of eye candy and things like,
Mhm.
what is
Yeah.
that? What does that mean? And that, it's
Mhm.
kind of like little nods and
Yeah.
winks here and there.
Yeah, and it's one of those movies that treats you like you're smart. It doesn't give everything to you.
No,
And like you were talking about when you were younger, um, it 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 treated you like you were in on something. Okay, you even though maybe you didn't understand the whole thing on your first
right.
viewing of it, it treated you smart enough to go, you know what's going on, right? It gave you enough to be interested in that world and get the overall concepts of it, and then later on you can go back and rewatch it and dig back in and find things that you didn't originally. And that's one of the cool things about writing a smart piece of media. We our constant whipping bag is Marvel movies, because a lot of it's just surface material stuff, which is,
Right.
nothing wrong with that. But with a movie like this is the time travel type movie that I love. Everybody loves Terminator 2 and loves that
Sure.
movie, and I do enjoy watching that. But if I had to pick the two, if I had to pick one for the island, off to nowhere, that I would have with me, it would be this one as opposed to Terminator 2, because this is
Mm,
my type of time traveling movie
sure.
that I'd get into. I would also like to say that this is one of the first movies that Terry Gilliam directed but didn't write. He likes to write his material, and this is based off of a screenplay by David and Janet Peoples. And that screenplay is actually based off of a French short film called Le Jetée, or Le Jetée. Yeah, Le
That's what I was
Jetée.
reading about.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's a short film by Chris Marker, which it's about 24 minutes, and it's a bunch of still photos. So I've never seen it. I've seen I've seen pictures of it. But I think there's only one scene where there's a little bit of emotion. But
Hmm.
basically the story of the short film is about a futuristic society that are sending people back in time to gather information. So it's basically, it's similar to this story. Obviously, this movie expands it out to 2 hours and 10 minutes, so it adds a whole bunch more. But I believe the ending of the movie's kind of the same as the ending of this movie, so we won't get into
Okay.
the details of it. But it's really fascinating. And Terry Gilliam Terry Gilliam purposely did not watch that short film to not be inspired. He didn't want everybody, the critics, to watch it and say, "Oh, well, he was just doing, a knockoff of that short film," which they did anyway. But but that was his kind of
Right.
way around it. And he did see it afterwards. Again, he didn't want to be influenced while filming, but he definitely wanted to see it. And it's he did see it. One of the interesting things that I found in the documentary about the movie is people's, that he Terry Gilliam wanted to be a team player for the studio. He wanted to, because he wants to make these big budgeted weird movies. So he wanted to play ball with the big studios, and prove to them, hey, I could do a good job, hey, so when they were getting ready to release the movie, they do those screenings, which, they were excited because they thought, well, people are going to really enjoy the movie. And, the filmmakers are there during the screenings. And again, they just pull people out from the mall into, say, hey, do you want to watch a new movie for free? So then, they show them the movie, and while they were watching the movie, Terry Gilliam and the producer was talking about how, animated and everybody really got into the movie and enjoyed it. But then when they broke them off into groups and they had them quiz and write down their thoughts about the movies, uh, they rated it poorly. And the thing that they kind of came to the conclusion is that while you're watching the movie, you enjoy the movie, but when you put a person in that position of, okay, well, what did you really think of the movie? You you kind of change their mindset into a critic, and well, and then you start to look for problems that aren't really there,
Mhm.
and
Sure.
and a lot of them, when they went into the movie, they didn't know what it was going to be. They knew Bruce Willis, Brad Pitt was in it, so they didn't get what they expected. And one of the things Terry Gilliam was very focused on was not lying to the audience. So when you go to the movie, they didn't want you to know, they wanted to give you the sense that this is not your average Bruce Willis movie. This is kind of a weird movie. This is not your typical movie. They didn't want to lie to
Right.
them, because if you
Right.
lie to the audience, then you're going to lose them. And now if you bring them in and say, okay, this is kind of a weird movie, it's going to treat you like a smart person, and that's going to encourage them. But yeah, after all those screenings, they decided, no, we're not going to change anything. They changed a few different things, very minor things in the movie, and they released it as is, which, which is kind of surprising. A lot of times people would, get into their head and want to rechange the movie, but basically, um, Terry Gilliam was like, this is 12 Monkeys. This is not Mission Impossible. If we try to make it turn it into Mission Impossible afterwards, it's not going to work. so
Right.
so yeah, they smartly did that. And one of the cool things I remember when the movie was coming out, they did this really interesting thing, is they started releasing those posters with those monkeys on it, and saying
Mhm.
they're coming, the future is the past or whatever. And it
Right.
had all this, and it was kind of interesting viral marketing that was new for that time, which is actually pretty regular nowadays, is that viral marketing of what is going on, what is this, so and it plays into the mystery of the movie, because the movie's that mystery as well, of what's going on in this movie. And then their final posters was putting, Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt on there, and that really kind of, I think that was a brilliant marketing strategy for the movie, because people were going to see it for those actors, but they also knew that it wasn't going to be your average Bruce Willis movie.
No kidding. It's a good. Yeah. That would have been cool to get one of them posters back in the day. But
Yeah.
uh, yeah, this is yeah, this was a. I was happy you mentioned this to review or to
Yeah.
go over, to enjoy. It's great. This is like one of those really great movies where you're in a science fiction movie, but it's not in your face. It's
Hmm.
very casual, but like Terminator, like you were saying
Hmm.
before, there's other variations like where time travels in there, but it's a
Yeah.
little bit different of a take on it, or
Yeah.
it's not techno babble and
Hmm.
we must fix the quantum resonance stream, Captain.
Yeah.
None of that, none of that. Not that there's
Right.
anything wrong with it either,
No. Yeah. Yeah. And
but
that was
not
another
everything has
thing.
to be on a spaceship.
Right, exactly. And
Right.
that was the one of the arguments they had, is like, Terry Gilliam was like, is this a science fiction movie? Because it's a science fiction movie, but it's also a black comedy. It's also a love story. It's also, kind of a mystery. It's also a very deep movie about madness and what where's the fine line between madness and sanity. There's all these various elements that are playing side by side with each other, and none of them are overwhelming the other. They're all playing in a constant game of chess. There's a scene later in the movie where the Madeleine Stowe, the psychiatrist, is sort of seeing the Cole's world for the first time and seeing that it's actually could be reality. And there's this very tender scene between the two of them that starts off, like I said, very tender and very intimate between them. And there's something later on in that scene that turns super violent, super funny, and all of that stuff plays off all at once within that one scene, and it all works because because by that point you're totally into this world and you understand the inner workings of it, and that this movie can do all of those things at once. I think the only thing that I had a problem with when I first saw it, and that stays with me to this day, is I don't think the chemistry between Madeleine Stowe and Bruce Willis is as strong as it could be. I don't get. I don't.
That.
I understand the romance angle between it, but I don't. There's like, it needs to be tweaked a little bit more, I think, within it. And they may have to do like reshoots to do that. And I think that was one of the complaints about the movie that they try to fix a little bit at the end. But every time I've seen it, that romance between Madeleine Stowe and Bruce Willis, it's not quite there. But that's my only complaint. It's a great movie. Besides that, I don't know. I think both actors, Madeleine Stowe and Bruce Willis, are great. I just don't know if maybe it's just a chemistry thing. I don't know. I don't know if you had that same reaction or not.
Yeah, it was all right. It was okay. Of course, she was in one of my all-time favorite movies, with Daniel Day-Lewis, I believe.
Last of the Mohicans.
Last Mohicans. Yeah. Anyway, but that's a whole different thing. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I can see that. I can see it didn't really honestly, like when a subplot is there, I don't dig in too much to it. I just accept it at face value when I kind of move on. I didn't really kind of drill in too much to the the romantic aspect of it. It's kind of like, I guess, like when you realize like what this guy's saying and what's going on is like literally Adam and Eve right in your eyes, or their Adam and Eve moment, so to speak, like for lack of a better term, of like basically that sort of dynamic. It's all right. It didn't really take me out of the thing.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't.
I kind of just like rolled over it, and kind of didn't dig in too much. But like, I'll have to take a look at it when I watch it again, and look for that and see if they're just kind of they're there, but they're not really there. Kind of sometimes that chemistry, and in a studio will they'll shit the crap can of movie if the chemistry isn't there. Like there are some people that just I don't know anything about acting or anything like that, but I do know that like sometimes like if two people just don't get along or whatever, they're
right.
One person just looks like it's just like literally a piece of wood would do a better job. Of
there's
than than a person, but nobody in this film does anything like that, in my opinion. Not so much.
Yeah, and that was one of the things Terry Gilliam was talking about. He said that a lot of the times being a good director is kind of sitting back and not saying anything and letting everybody else talk, and then finding all the good ideas, saying no to the bad ones, and putting all the good ones in there. And that's what he loves about having good actors like Bruce Willis. He was talking about how great an actor he was, in that he was always trying to add ideas, and the same with Brad Pitt. they're always trying to contribute. And he said it was an interesting dynamic between Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt, in that, you know, since Bruce is a little bit older, he was sort of the mentor for the younger Brad Pitt person. And
Mhm.
they talked about, he talked about this one thing with Brad Pitt. It was they were filming on April Fool's Day, and Brad Pitt goes, "Hey man, let's have a fight. Let's have a fight on on set, you know, and freak people out for April Fools." And, and Terry goes like, "All right, all right." And so they got into it, and he said that Brad must have not have realized that he had been storing up some critiques of Brad Pitt that that maybe he wasn't aware of, and he could see that maybe Brad got a little hurt with it. He goes, and that it might have came to blows. He said it was interesting seeing the crew kind of step back and just kind of let it happen, you know. and and then at the end
Oh,
of it, they said, "Oh no, yeah, it's April Fools, whatever."
right.
But that was interesting.
That's funny. That would have been cool to watch for sure. Fly in the wall.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Because yeah, Terry Gilliam. I really enjoyed the audio commentary. If you do get the movie on 4K, those of you out there, I would recommend watching the commentary. A lot of times I go into it like, okay, I'm going to start this commentary, and you know, whether or not it holds my interest is whether or not I'm going to listen to it. And you know, some of them I turn off because it gets way too technical. I'm not interested in that. Terry
Hmm.
Gilliam's you know, this, you know, funny British guy that comes from the comedy of Monty Python. so just listening to him is fun. So yeah, I would definitely recommend the commentary, and also the feature length movie on there about the making of it. Pretty much he kind of, it's sort of like a fly on the wall kind of making of the movie. uh
Cool.
and it's very interesting. And again, he's Terry Gilliam's very self-deprecating. He gives all the credit to everybody else, and kind of, you know, maybe, you know, every once in a while kind of explains his process and whatnot. But it's he's very down to earth person that he said that, you know, he was very much into making, since he was doing making the screenplay of David and Janet Peoples. He was very much into making their movie, their vision, whereas everybody else in the seemed to be wanting to make a Terry Gilliam movie and kept trying to put little elements of him into it. It's like, oh wait, no, this isn't my movie. But but yeah, that, I guess with a director, there's no way around not putting yourself on the screen there. And
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
one of those sort of like David Lynch, in that he gets kind of obsessed with the details of it, but that's all in uh it adds into the story and the story making of the movie. It's not there just to be there. It's there because it works within the context of the movie. Whereas a lot of people, I think, that are influenced by, say, Terry Gilliam and David Lynch, they get all the quirky stuff from it, but don't understand how that works within the movie itself. And this is sort of an example of a, you know, master storytelling, master filmmaking, in that everything sort of works together. And there's a couple of scenes that he talks about in the commentary about how they're filming it a certain way. And this is towards the end of the movie, so I won't get into details, but they're filming it in a certain way. But then on reflection of it afterwards, they realized, oh, well, this is kind of tying into Hitchcock and how Hitchcock did this movie. And there's sort of like that subconscious um kind of undercurrent is going on with the movie. And you know, it's kind of interesting when you're kind of, you know, making a movie on feelings, or with sort of a vision, that, you know, you do kind of unconsciously draw in sort of influences, and make and give certain scenes a little bit more meaning than they normally would.
That's cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was just kind of flipping through here, and
Yeah.
this is one that I'm surprised. Well, I'm actually kind of grateful that this was made and then kind of left alone. There's no attempts to make this into a franchise kind of thing, which what I don't think would really work too well. What they have done though is they have done this TV show, which is I was talking about earlier, and it's just pretty good. I don't know what, but it was solid when I watched it, and I'm really looking forward to getting into this one, and like watching see the most of season one, and then looking to see like what happens. Like I'm sure
Yeah.
no show's perfect throughout a whole thing,
Right.
but yeah, even if you're not going to go that far in the weeds, which is that, and then I guess maybe even to go back and look at the other one, the one that was loosely based on the film, whatever,
Yep.
nuclear apocalypse through the stills that you were talking about. I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce the name because I'm gonna
Jetée.
destroy it. Right.
That was another interesting thing about the movie is there's that theme music throughout it that kind of sounds kind of French. That that sort of I can't do the music, but that little horn.
No, the vibe. Yeah, the vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought it was kind of French music, but on the commentary it says it's someone recommended it's a Argentine tango from Argentina, and but it has sort of like that French vibe to it, that kind of maybe is kind of a rings true to the original short film, which is a French film. By way of Argentina, you got this. But yeah, that I've never heard of Argentine tangos before, but from that little snippet, it made me kind of interested in that type of sound. But yeah,
For
it's
sure. Check it out later.
yeah, definitely. But but yeah, we also do a grab bag, which I do have a story about Terry Gilliam, and also a possible TV show, not the 12 Monkeys we were talking about, but an upcoming one that may have some issues. But yeah, that's kind of a teaser for our grab bag that we do every week. It's sort of a grab bag of various things that we like to talk about. We
there could be
sometimes
some kind of controversy or something in the from the internet. No way.
yeah. Yeah, and sometimes we feel so passionate about we'll get up on a soapbox, or there's some cringe stuff out there that we cover in our cringe corner. But yeah, if you've stayed with us this far, you might want to like and subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. And we've got an impressive backlog of various podcasts that aren't time sensitive. All of them are movies that we either love or we're interested in seeing, with our unique perspective on it, and the nerdom that we live in.
We are we gotta be rolling up on our 100th episode, which we probably should we should probably pay attention to that and do something special with it, or call it whatever. Well, I'll have to look, but I know I think we're either at or over. I can't remember the last time the number I saw.
Yeah,
but
it was in the 90s, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's got to be like rolling right over or something like that. For all I know, when we do this, maybe this week's grab bag. If you join us Wednesday, like Thomas was saying, we can. Well, it would be. I think Tom's checking in on it there. But in that vein, this one was a fun to revisit, and I think we will be doing dipping our toe in some more oddities like this that are just fun to watch, and maybe they were successful at the box office, maybe not, probably not, not like that anyway, but they did get more. But yeah, this did pretty good in the box office, I believe. I did see the opening box office numbers, and like the opening weekend, this made like $180,000 or something like that. Or, you know, it was like, wow, that's not a lot, but it went on to gross like quite a bit.
Well, you gotta kind of factor, you kind of have to factor in it being the 90s, and also
Right.
that's another thing we could bring up is that it was the #1 movie in every country that it was released in. And it was made for 30 million, and it made 160 million. So
That
yeah,
sounds right.
it was wasn't a huge success, but it wasn't a huge movie either. Yeah, the Brad Pitt and Bruce Willis, everybody kind of took a pay cut on it because this was the kind of movie that they wanted to make. And
Yeah.
also a shout out to um, Frank Gorshin, who is, everybody may remember as the Riddler. They got him to play the head of the psychiatric division in this movie, which I always get tickled seeing the Riddler as the head of the psychiatric department
That's
at the
funny. That's so
hospital.
funny. That's awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, we like Thomas was also saying, we'd love for you to join us on this Wednesday. We get into a grab bag. There's some follow up things, like you saying, that are current events. Anyway, yeah, if you could like, subscribe, comment. If maybe you don't like this movie, tell us why you don't like the movie, or what your favorite aspect of it, or how did you find it? How did you discover it? Did you actually get to see it in the theater? That would be cool to have been able to do. I was way too young to. I caught it later on. I always remember seeing the VHS movie cover of it whenever I would go. It was like sitting out like a sore thumb. But yeah, no, this week was fun. We invite you to watch it. Watch this one and watch any of the other ones. Last week's we covered the menu in Pale Blue Eye. Pale Blue Eye. No, I kept saying eyes. Oh well, one human or whatever. But with that being said, I've been Mike.
And I'm Thomas, and don't get obsessed on that hamster and that wheel.
See ya.
See ya.